Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be talking about week 3. So in my last video in week 2 we were talking about how we got our name tapes to be sewn on that Friday. So we actually went to get them sewn on Tuesday because that Monday was actually the 4th of July when I went through BMT. So we kind of had that day off. It was kind of basically just like another Sunday. So we, the dorm chief had a list of things for us to do, and we just did them. But on that Tuesday, we got our name tapes sewn on, and we also went to second issue, which is where you get your blues. And that is really fun. You're there all day. And when I say fun, I don't mean like fun, but I mean that it's exciting because you are going on to another step in BMT, and it's just something to look forward to. You'll learn that you kind of look forward to these little things because it lets you know that you're making progress. And it's funny because there's a floor mat outside of the door and it says, "Congratulations, you're halfway through basic training." So that was the halfway point of BMT, and it's crazy. I always tell people that the days go by slow, but the weeks go by fast, and it's really true. Each day of the week, it seems to go by so slow, and you're just like dead. But then before you know it, the week's over, which kind of doesn't make sense because you think that the days are slow. But I don't know, it really makes sense to me. The days go by slow, but the weeks go by fast. So we got our name tapes on our uniform. So now I have my last name and my U.S. Air Force, and it makes you feel really proud too, because that's a huge achievement to make. Some people don't make it through BMT to that point, and so it made me feel really good that I was able to make it and get that accomplishment as another step that I can cross off my list, saying that I'm one step closer to graduating. We also had our second PT test. So in week 0, I was talking about my PT test. Now again, I have my BMT SG where I wrote down the times and what I actually did. So in our second PT test, my run time was 11:53. So still, I made I shaved off 30 seconds basically from the last PT test. And then my push-ups, I did 25. So that's 5 more than our initial PT test. And then I did 40 sit-ups, which is 8 more than my initial PT test. So for my run time, I actually went from remember the lanes, I was in the green lane. I actually went from the green belt and I got a blue belt. So I went to the furthest most lane. So I was pretty proud about that. And then my push-ups and sit-ups, I was still working on to be able to make sure that I pass in those areas, because like I said, you need to have 33 push-ups and 44 sit-ups. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so I was making sure to continue to work on those, and it kind of made me a little bit more nervous going into the last PT test, because up until this point so far for the practice ones, and this was our last practice PT test, and the next test was going to be it. That was going to be our final test, or our actual PT test. Like if you don't pass this, you don't pass BMT. So I was kind of worried about if I was going to be able to do enough push-ups and sit-ups for it. But I'll talk about that in week 6. But obviously I passed because I'm here now at tech school. So kind of a spoiler, but I did pass. But I'll tell you what I got on that, because and it's funny because we actually took a PT test in tech school and I did even better than I did in BMT. But that's for another video. But anyway, we got our haircuts, which, speaking of, I actually need a haircut now, but we got our haircuts that week, and we also got our CAT cards, which, like I said before, are those military IDs. That was actually pretty cool too. Like I said, just another milestone or check mark, you can say. It's a military ID for those of you who have never been in the military. Um, it's cool. I mean, you have a military ID now, and it's something that you have been working to up until this point, and it's just another milestone on your list of things to complete throughout BMT. So that was pretty cool. And then the rest of the week, we basically did RLAs every day. So now you have your ABUs, and then you have your blues. So you have to do the same thing with your blues. You have to mark them. You have to make sure everything's in your locker correctly, everything's rolled correctly. And later at the end of the week, we had an appraisal on our blues. So it was just basically making sure the same thing they did before, making sure everything was correct. They only focused on the blues, so they didn't look at the ABU. So they made sure that you had your blues in the locker correctly, that everything was set up how it was supposed to be. And then after they did that, the next one, which is going to be in week 6, is going to be on your whole locker, everything. So your ABUs, your blues, everything, making sure that everything is set up that how it's supposed to be. So basically what you're supposed to do is take these appraisals and fix everything that's wrong, because they will tell you everything that's wrong. And if you fix it and leave it how it is, because you're not wearing your blues you don't wear your blues until week 6 anyway. So if you keep everything how it's supposed to be, you shouldn't have any issues with passing, which for the most part, everyone in my flight passed on the first time except for one person, which I'll go into later in that video. But it's nothing really to worry about as long as you're taking what they're telling you and you're fixing it after, or you're keeping a mental note afterwards and fixing it, you'll be fine. And that is pretty much it for week 3. So the biggest thing that happened in week 3 is basically getting your name tape sewn on and getting your blues and your cat card. But that's kind of small compared to other things. But getting your second issue, getting your name tape sewn on. And then actually leading up into week 4, which will be in the next video, I got my first job, which I got first aid monitor. So in week 4, which will be coming up here shortly, I'll be talking about my job kind of will come into effect here, because you'll be learning about FEST, F-E-S-T, which you will then use at BEAST, which is in week 5. So my job, it really didn't come into play until for one class in week 4, and then for all of week 5, which was BEAST. So I kind of didn't really, I didn't want a job. Like I said before, I kind of just wanted to go through everything, but it worked out. The reason I got it was because of my previous job before I joined. I was a pharmacy technician at a hospital. So I was kind of familiar with like different medications and stuff like that. And my MTI picked me and another person to be first aid monitors. And the other person was an EMT, I believe. So we kind of had a medical background, so it makes sense to pick us. And the job really wasn't that hard. And then when we went to BEAST, we just had more responsibilities, which I'll go into in that video. I almost forgot, guys. So actually, Friday of week 3, you get your first phone call. This is the most important part of week 3, besides the other stuff. I mean, probably better than the other stuff, because you're actually getting the call home for the first time since you got there. Your first phone call was on 0 night, or like the next day or so. I mean, basically you have to read off a script, and it doesn't really count as a phone call. So this is your first actual phone call back home. It's 15 minutes, and it's emotional, because like I said, this is the first time you're actually being able to call home, talk to your family, tell them what's going on, and you know, it was really awesome. I called my mom. The 15 minutes, it's the fastest 15 minutes of your life. You're talking to them, and it's just hearing their voice. You don't really know how much you miss someone or you love someone until you like want to talk to them and you can't, or you want to hear their voice and you can't. So it's really that 15-minute phone call, it means a lot to everyone. It kind of builds morale back up, um, and it's really awesome. I think having it in week 3 is it's good because you've gone through so much up until this point, and then you've had multiple hurdles to overcome, and so being able to call home at the end of week 3 before you go on to your next journey, um, it really means a lot. So that is all for week 3. So I take back what I said before. The most important part of week 3 is that phone call, because you get to call home, you get to talk to your family, your loved ones, and hearing their voice and them being able to talk to you and reassure you and tell you everything's going to be okay and that you're going to make it. It really means a lot. So look forward to that. I was kind of worried that my mom wasn't going to answer the phone, but I had wrote in my letter that we were getting the phone call, because the week I looked at the calendar and I saw the phone call was coming up by Friday, and she actually had got the letter the Thursday before I called. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. I think she got it that same day in the afternoon, so she knew I was going to be calling later in that evening, so it worked out perfectly. So she was home and able to answer the phone. But that's it for week 3, guys. So in my next video, I'll be talking about week 4, and kind of how my job that I got as first aid monitor comes into play. And I'll see you there. Thanks.